Hi, this is Dee with USD's Career Development Center. Welcome to Alumni Zoom Trips, a series of pre-recorded interviews with USD alumni experts about how to navigate the long-term impact of COVID-19 on our communities and workplaces. The program is co-hosted with the Office of Alumni Relations. I have today with me Leonie Sandelbaum. She's the Head of Client Services and Wholesale Banking Operations at ING Bank. Prior to her current role, she was the Chief of Staff to ING's Head of Corporate Strategy. And before joining ING, she worked more than 7 years in Deloitte and IBM Consulting in Germany, advising big universal banks in post-merger integration, outsourcing, and core banking implementation projects. She holds an International Master of Business Administration from the University of San Diego. Today, we'll be focusing on COVID-19's impact on the global banking system and highlight key career advice and tips for those of you interested in employment opportunities in Europe. So Leonie, it's wonderful to have you here today. I know it's getting late in Germany right now. So can you please share a little bit more about your background with our listeners?
Of course, yeah, thank you for having me in this Zoom trip and interview. It's actually one of the first interviews that I'm doing in this kind of setup. That's why it's also very exciting for me. So a bit more about my background. As you already said, I'm working for ING. Usually I'm sitting in Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. However, because of the Corona crisis, because of COVID-19, which was kind of a spur of the moment kind of thing, I relocated from Amsterdam to Germany to be closer to my family. Because it doesn't really matter where I sit in what home office, whether it's in Amsterdam or here close to Frankfurt. But it's also kind of nice to actually be closer to the family, especially in times like this. I'm very connected to my teams, also connected to my peers. We've done a tremendous job over the last couple of weeks to really move everything to the working from home. And to have video conferences, phone conferences. I'm constantly on the phone during the day, which is also quite a change because before I used to be back-to-back in meetings, but now I'm literally sitting all the time, and I also have to get used to the fact that my Apple Watch, for instance, tells me at the end of the day, you need to get moving, Leonie, because
I was going to ask you that. Like, do you get that Zoom fatigue or phone fatigue?
Totally. Yeah. So I started a ritual that at least if the weather is nice, I go for at least 1 hour of a walk. I do a lot of online yoga as well. So I really relocated a lot of the activities that I used to have now to the digital world. I have my cocktail hours. I also have my Zoom connects with my friends. But sometimes you're also just like really tired of all the Zoom, or actually we use Skype more internally at ING. But you get quite tired at the end of the day because you're constantly just like sitting in your desk and have the same visual in front of you, or you have the visual in the back of me. Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So what kinds of challenges has the COVID-19 situation created for ING, and how are they being addressed?
Yeah. Well, so also for us, COVID-19 didn't just like appear from one day to another, right? I mean, we already saw the news in China. We also have some business in Asia. So from a global perspective, we already felt some of the impact. However, in different regions, and especially here in Europe, I think we saw it quite late in terms of, oh my goodness, we really need to act now and to get our business continuity plans started. And from that perspective, I would say this is almost like, to look at it more from the positive side, this is the perfect way to test your pandemic plans, to test your BCPs, your business continuity plans, which we're doing.
Management plans and all of that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we formed very quickly a crisis management organization on different levels. And especially at the beginning, because literally on a Friday, I still remember we had phone conferences scheduled, and it was kind of like a cascaded chain of command almost. where every layer in the company actually received the message, okay, as of Monday, everyone has to start working from home. And then, of course, a lot of questions arose, and you had to deal with those questions. So I still remember on that Friday afternoon, I told my team, guys, as of Monday, you're not allowed back in the office anymore. And then questions like, yeah, but I still have my computer in the office because my day off was today, and these kind of things we had to deal with. And then also from a customer or client's perspective, we really had to show a lot of agility and also flexibility to not only address their concerns and their requests, because I'm also working more on the change side. However, I work very closely with the actual operations. So on the corporate banking side, where clients call us or email us and say, hey, I'm also in the crisis right now. My supply chain is broken. I can't actually, I can't really get all of the bills paid, etc. Can you, as my house bank, ING, can you please help me, either by giving me some of a reprieve of the loans, etc., or by helping out some like differently, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in such a short period of time, we had to get our act together internally to take care of our employees as well, because of course I have in my team people who, for instance, belong to the risk groups. They were really concerned. So on the one hand, you have to balance that, of course, business as usual has to continue. On the other hand, rightfully so, they're concerned not only about their loved ones, but also concerned about their own health, and you need to be there for them. And then, of course, we have our clients and our customer, and we need to be there for them as well, because we are now systemically relevant for them. And I think that is a big thing.
Sure. I mean, what lessons in leadership have you gotten out of this? Just because you're managing so many different constituents and stakeholders.
Yeah, I think this balance between being empathetic and compassionate, but as well, I have my duty towards my employer as well, right?
Sure.
Despite the crisis, despite that everyone had to settle in, we also still need to deliver on our projects, on the committed milestones, etc., etc. So I think to a certain degree, even at the beginning, I had to be a bit more empathetic and also a bit more patient. And of course, because everyone needed to get used to this new way of working, or a lot of times people like to use the word the new normal. Sure. And on the other hand, also not to lose sight of what are we in our particular role in our particular department, what are we supposed to to deliver and to implement and to work on, right?
Sure. How is this time different, do you think, from the global financial crisis of 2008 and 9?
Well, I'd say in the financial crisis, the banks were the culprits. Okay. So we were the bad guys, and I think some people might even still think that. And it's quite interesting. Depending on in what country you're in, there is a totally different perception of banks and bankers. So, for instance, when you're in the Netherlands and you say to someone who's totally not in your sector, "Yeah, I work at a bank," you probably, and for sure, you get a different reaction than in other European countries. So.
There's also... Say more about that. I'm curious. How so?
Well, I would say that the Dutch, they're much more critical about the banks. And also because of the history that, for instance, ING had to get some state money at the time during the financial crisis, even though we paid everything back. But that is still ingrained in people's perception, right? And also the public opinion about banks is quite strong, and actually also almost like influences the lobbying when it comes to any kind of political decisions and debates. Whereas in other countries, because of a different cultural background, they might actually yeah, look at the banking sector more as, yeah, they do their thing, so they're more indifferent. And in some other countries, banks still are still quite a heavyweight. So I think that is the main difference now, that across, and I work in a global role, so I work with a lot of different countries on a daily basis. And now I really hear and I feel the difference in the sense that now we are, what I said earlier, we are systemically relevant. So we can really have an impact on our clients. And a lot of the things that we've already done, such as, for instance, reacting with agility in certain rules that we internally would usually have in the normal life, where we said, you know what, we will find a workaround with you. That is very much appreciated. So so that is more on the corporate banking side, but also with the individual customers, I do believe that what you also read in the press and in the media, that banks are the access for a lot of people to get to financial liquidity these days,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. And how would you advise soon to be our graduating seniors, right, to job hunt amid this whole COVID-19 situation, especially those that are interested in finance careers and really breaking into careers in banking?
Yeah. I'm not sure whether this has changed so much from the reality before, because I actually thought, I think about this question also in the sense, would I have answered that differently before COVID-19? And I don't think so. So I still think that the digital tools like all the platforms like LinkedIn are very much like your tool. You need to go there on a daily basis in order to not only connect to people, but do your research on companies, to get not only on companies, but also on people that you deal with, etc. And I think the number one recommendation that I also used to have before is you really need to do your homework in terms of also reaching out to, for instance, reach out to alums. If you're really interested in financial services, then try to use the tools and also the resources that USD has. Try to meet some of the alums that work in that area. Specifically, if you're interested in an international career, then just give me a call, write me an email, for instance, and I provide you with as much as possible in terms of support and also resources and help. And I think, for instance, if I, in any kind of interaction, if I truly believe, hey, this person, this senior, would be a great addition not only in my team, but also in my peers' teams, or even I need to talk to some other senior manager, or in my personal network from before, then it would be so easy for me to just pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, even if you don't have a vacancy right now, why don't you have a chat?
Okay. I mean, it's wonderful for our students and for our alumni who are in career transition to know that, they can rely on the alumni network to help, forge those connections for them. So thank you so much for that. So is that to say that you're currently actively hiring, or is ING, are there certain hiring precautions that are in place right now?
Well, so for some vacancies, we are still hiring. Yes, okay. Indeed. I would say, so the short answer to the question is it depends. It depends on what area. So also within ING, we have areas that are, especially in the COVID-19 situation like now, they're just needed, right, and critical. So we constantly look for talents and new hires. Maybe in some other areas where you might say, well, we don't have that much time, resources, and also the capital, for instance, to invest in, then it could be that the vacancies are at least being put on hold. But at least in my area, for instance, because we are working very closely with the client, we're still hiring for roles, for instance, where someone had to leave us, or is for whatever reason actually is out of the role.
Okay. And if those are, positions that are in your corporate offices in Netherlands, so how does that work? If a student were to apply, do they work virtually and remotely for now, given the travel restrictions? Or yeah.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I would say that the hiring process, even though we're within the banking sector, I would say ING is ahead of the pack when it comes to being digital, and
Okay.
we're really also seen as the role model, and that also applies to our internal processes, and in hiring is one of them as well. But let's also be realistic. Hiring is not that does not happen overnight, right? Usually it takes a couple of weeks, if not even months, especially if you're coming from outside of the European Union in order to get all of the visas, etc., etc. So whatever answer I could give you right now is probably already outdated in a couple of weeks and months from now. That's why I'm not going to focus too much on the current situation. I do believe that if someone is really interested, if there's a will, there's always a way, right? So what I would say is, again, if you're, for instance, interested in a certain vacancy, that would be the easiest, because then at least internally we already have, for instance, the job description done, etc. You would just apply to it. But we also encourage people to apply without a specific vacancy in mind, because sometimes it really is about, okay, I do see a talent.
That match, right?
Exactly. And then I just make it work. So I don't think that even COVID-19 would hold us.
And can you tell us a little bit about ING's work culture, and I'm sure, and how it's shifted in these recent months?
Yeah, that's a good one. ING, in my eyes, is very, very much an informal, very much like person-to-person culture, in terms of everything is so much easier to be aligned when you meet the person, when you have seen the person face to face, when you have built a relationship. So very much relationship focused. It's almost, I'm not saying it's almost impossible to get things done without having a relationship with people, but it's so much more difficult. So we're much less transactional than relational, I would say. And this is also something that I had to learn when I moved to the Netherlands and when I started working for ING, because even now I've been here for 4 years, even when I visit some other countries, the corporate culture is really this very much relationship-based culture. And how has that changed? I think the relationship culture hasn't changed. So it's just a bit more difficult, I think, these days, when you have to build a new relationship with a colleague via the digital means, like via Zoom or Skype or phone, etc. Right? And I don't think, but that's my personal opinion, that all the digital tools will replace the actual face-to-face interaction. However, I think the COVID-19 really gave us such a boost and such a push internally that we had to move from a very informal relationship-based culture to a very almost like formal, more transactional culture, where even if you have a relationship or a good relationship with someone as a colleague, because you're on the phone, it's much more transactional. It's more like, okay, my agenda is this and this and this. Are we done? Okay, thanks, bye. So the chit-chatting is not happening as much as it used to, for instance, in the office. And that's actually something that I'm really missing.
Okay, very interesting. And how did, we talked prior to this talk that you really missed the USD and you continue to come visit us every year. So can you tell our listeners about how your USD degree prepared you for your current work?
Yeah. So the tools and also the methodologies that I learned during my international MBA on twofold, on the personal soft skill level, but as well for my actual job. And at the time it was in consulting. Now it's really in a line job in banking. So I really learned to think even more so, I think, scientifically and also in a very structured way. And this gives me so much advantage in my current job because I always thought this is kind of like a given. However, it is actually quite a rare skill that I honed during my time at USD. I would also say that, but that was also the reason why I chose USD at the time. San Diego for me is such a melting pot, right? I believe you almost on a daily basis, your face or you're reminded that you're living in an area where there are so many cultural differences, where there's so much diversity just in one place. So I'm absolutely certain that you embrace that diversity so much more, and you kind of get this ingrained during your USD degree. Mm-hmm. And right now, and where I'm living and also where I'm working, Amsterdam is super international. It's so diverse. It's also so liberal. But also ING headquarters, and also in the countries, we're very international. So it's rare that to only hear one language. It's actually more the normal that when you're in the coffee corner that you hear a lot of different languages, because we in Europe we have so many different languages with like only like a little bit of distance in between, right? So I think this is what I really took away from my USD degree the most.
Thanks for that, Leonie. And what would you say are keys to success in financial services?
Yeah, I would say a couple. So one is integrity, because especially when it comes to banking or financial services, I mean, why do people come to us? Because they trust us with their money. And especially when it comes to money, there are also a lot of sayings about it that really differentiates who you trust and who you don't trust, right? And in order to earn that trust and also to keep it, you need to have this integrity. That's why I believe integrity is absolute key to success in this field. Mm-hmm. Another one is, I would say, resilience, or you can also call it persistence. Mm-hmm. So sometimes not to take no as an answer, but then to also know at the right moment when to pick your battle. Especially in a corporate, in such an industry, it is always a bit of a line dancing. You dance on this very thin line. Mm-hmm. And that's why resilience is really, really important, because if you didn't have that resilience, you would probably already have given up. And another one I would say is excellence. So really high quality work, and that is my personal opinion. You can be the best talker, you can be a smooth talker, you will make it really, really far. But in the end, people notice and recognize whether you're really good in terms of what you deliver, and whether you stay true to your word, and whether you're authentic as well in that. So the high quality work really is the best testimonial that you can have. And I think that is also the key to success in this field.
Okay. And I mean, we haven't touched upon this, but as a female leader in such a competitive industry, how would you assess ING's values and its culture in terms of cultivating professional growth for women?
I would say I really, for the moment, I really landed in the right spot. ING is very much aware of diversity and how important it is. Mm-hmm. I still think that also ING, or the banking sector overall, there's still a long way to go to get to equality. However, sometimes when I listen to some of my peers or also my managers, and when they tell me about how it was like decades ago, etc., I sometimes think, oh my God, I'm so glad that I'm living in 2020. But I'm also a very ambitious person myself, so I also see how much we still have to go in order to reach this equality, and I truly believe in that. So of course, I grew up in a culture, also during consulting, but also now in banking, where it's still, unfortunately, the normal that I'm sometimes the only woman in the room, with different levels. So sometimes with a lot of male colleagues who are, my seniors, or sometimes also my juniors. It's really across the board.
Yeah.
And I hope to really change that as well. So, and that is also one of my credos, I would say, or my mottos, to really change that over time, to pull more and more female talents up. And for instance, I have created, for at least for my own team, I've created one value that is diversity, and not only in terms of gender, but also nationality, expertise, background, but very much also on gender, because I do believe I have a responsibility there as well. And I have already really great female talents, and I'm actually I'm above a 50%, at least for my team. So I'm very proud of all of the ladies. Indeed.
Wonderful. And hopefully we'll get you more female talent from the Toreros, right, to join you. And on a final note, what is something that you've learned later in your career that you wish you knew a little bit sooner?
Ooh, that's a good one. An easy one could be that I should have learned coding when I was in school. Unfortunately, it was never offered. But I do think that this is still an oversight in high school, when you look at programs, etc. Because also, even though you might think, why would she want to code? She works in banking. However, we consider us as a bank as a to-be technology company. And in order to also implement new innovative ideas, groundbreaking ideas, well, guess what? There's no way around new technology and to embrace new technology. And I do believe that to have a even more proper understanding of how does, for instance, natural language processing really work, and even if you could code and implement this yourself, I think this would really give me also a head start. I do believe that over the time, and also because I've worked at companies that are very tech heavy, like IBM in the past, I already got this ingrained. But I think if I knew this much earlier, that technology overall would gain so much in importance, and that, for instance, those platform companies like Facebooks and Googles of this world are so successful these days, I would have tried to get much more training in that area in the past.
Yeah, and you probably still can, right? I mean, there are a lot of online tools. Absolutely. Are there any other hard or soft skills that you'd like to add to that? Either related to your industry, but doesn't have to be particularly relevant to that too.
I do have one, but I'm not sure. So I'm still testing it, whether it's the right one, because maybe you need to ask me in 10 years from now whether I would still say the same. But I would say that, especially at the beginning of my career, I participated in a lot of like female only kind of trainings, like how to survive as a female in consulting, because again, I was most of the time the only woman on the table, especially with a lot of like male clients. And I got a lot of feedback or recommendations during those trainings, and also from peers and managers at the time, how to behave properly as a female professional. And I'm now embarking, because I'm in a management position myself, and I do also have to say that I now have the right support network, but I'm embarking the belief that I actually think all of this is just like, I'm not allowed to say that, but it's BS. It's not the right thing to prepare female talents, especially at the beginning of the career, because it actually just makes you even more uncertain and unsure of yourself. And I truly believe that if I had known at the time, with the confidence that I have now, with all of the successes that I already had, that my success is by being my authentic self, and also my female authentic self. Even if I also still have those moments where I'm like, yeah, well, a guy or a man would probably react or behave like this now, like this. But I'm not a man, and I have my own leadership style, I have my own communication style, and that's totally okay and totally fine. That's actually the best that you can do. And I think if I had that known earlier, then I would have spared a lot of time. A lot of not only time in terms of going to trainings, but also a lot of like headache.
I love that. What I'm hearing is that success is really a product of the match between your authentic self and your leader identity and your leader self, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. Well, we'll go ahead and end on that note. I just would like to say thank you so much for your time and insights today. This was a really inspirational conversation, and hopefully, as soon as these travel restrictions are lifted, we'll get to have you visit us again, or we'll come to you in Germany or Netherlands or wherever you may be. All right. Thanks so much, Leonie.
Thank you so much for having me.